Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the show today. Listen, I am not sure if I've ever been as excited about a particular guest as I am today. I have to say that when I got the opportunity to actually interview my guest today, I was excited like right in the beginning, but then immediately it turned into, oh my God, I'm actually interviewing him. And so it was an interesting conversation to put together, because one of the things that you guys know that we do right here on our show is I'm always interested in perspective, and I'm interested in the way CEOs think, so that you can get an insight as you're building your career, as you're building your path, as you're building your own lane, of how people who are already doing it now can help you remove some of those roadblocks, the understandings, the tools, the different pieces, all of the different things that come into being a leader, being a CEO. And I've got someone today that is going to be a fun conversation that I see a lot of replay off of this one. And so just to give you some context, not only is he a CEO, but he's a CEO in an industry that a lot of people may or may not know about, or don't understand the intricacies and the nuances of this industry. And I'm talking about like video game industry. Yeah, like this thing. You know, most people would look at this and go, oh, that's just a bunch of child's play. But what you may or may not know is that this industry, in my personal opinion, is rivaling movie industry because of what it can do, because of the type of stories that they can tell. And I'm a huge storyteller. And so what I love is the person I'm going to interview today is responsible for this. Yes, this is a video game called Detroit Become Human. It is an exclusive. It is a great game, but more than a game. I want to be very, very clear, and you'll see why here in a moment, because it tells a story. And I think one of the things that you have to learn to do as a CEO, as a leader, as even in just a manager, doesn't matter where you are, if you can learn how to tell really great stories, people will follow you. And I have to say, this has been one of the most anticipated games behind some of the other ones that this company has done. Quantic Dream has been around for a while. My first pass, I'll talk about that here in a moment, with Quantic Dream was a game years ago that I would have never seen turn into what it is now. And so, ladies and gentlemen, listen, I just want to introduce my CEO for the day. I'm gonna allow you to share, because I realize I am not the greatest at how names should go, the best way for people to be able to say things. So I'm going to let you tell our audience your name, who you are. And here's what I would like for you to do. And I haven't even allowed people to see you yet. What I want you to do is I want you to share with everyone a little bit about your background. And so I want to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO, the creator, and the leader of Quantic Dream. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm very fine. Thank you so much. So my name is Guillaume de Fondaumie, and I'm the co-CEO of Quantic Dream, which I have the privilege to lead with David Cage, who's the founder of the company and the writer and director of all our games. My background is I originally studied business. And then when I was very young, I was about 21, if I remember well, I founded my second company. I started very young, even younger before, but my second company was a special effects and computer graphics studio called Arxel Tribe, which I co-founded in 1992.
Wow.
With two architects from Slovenia. And the idea behind this company was to pioneer computer graphics and try and bring this incredible visuals to first the industry, industrial design. We worked a lot with car designers, then the advertising industry, and later on games. And so I discovered games a little bit by chance, I must say. For us at the beginning, it was only a market where we could for which we could create computer graphics and special effects. But then studying a little bit this market, I found that this would be an incredible opportunity for the studio to express its creative inspirations, creative aspirations, and so we basically stopped doing everything else and focused on video games. And we were extremely lucky because for our first games we got to work with an incredibly talented Brazilian writer, Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist, and an amazing designer, Moebius, Jean Giraud by his real name. Moebius, who was responsible for Tron, the initial movie.
Wow.
And who's a very, very famous and respected French comic book designer. And so, to be very frank, initially I didn't have this grand vision of going into this kind of games, but by meeting these extraordinary folks and looking at where the market was and what our strengths in the company was also at that time, very high quality graphics, I thought, well, maybe there is a potential for story driven, high quality games, for bringing authors that come from other industries, from other creative forms, and bring them to the games industry and create, real works, not only toys for kids, but truly entertaining experiences for a more mature audience. So this is how I started, and to make a long story short, I produced 20 other games with this company. Then I sold it, and one day I met David Cage, who had recently founded Quantic Dream, and he was an auteur, a video game auteur, and I found his vision very interesting. It was very close to my own, and we decided to work together. And I produced Fahrenheit, called Indigo Prophecy in the United States, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and the recently published Detroit Become Human.
It's an amazing journey. So just so you know, my first bout with storytelling was within video game world, right? Was not necessarily what Quantic Dream was developing. In the early 90s, I played a game that was called Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy was the first time that I looked at storytelling in a way that it could be done. Now, my first game from Quantic Dream was Indigo Prophecy. That was the first game that I had ever played. And I guess this is the way it kind of hit me. I didn't know you could do that in a game. Right? Like, I was kind of used to, run and gun games, right? Sports games. When Indigo Prophecy came out, you had everything from, different, the Sega Genesis to, what was happening. PlayStation, to me, had won my attention off of things like a Final Fantasy for its storytelling. But when I first saw Indigo Prophecy, it gave me a different lens about, to your point, the aspect of what a video game could be. I didn't realize you could put that much thought and level of care, character development, right, into a game. So it was really enlightening. So I want to kind of start at the very beginning, right? Because I want to make sure that our audience gets an understanding of how this works in the world of video game development. So let's start with the basics, right? Because I personally believe that video games, as of probably 5 years ago, definitely could rival most movies that come out nowadays. If you went pound for pound between writing, storytelling, the actors that are now starting to come over and venture into the video game space, I truly believe there could be some things that could happen in the video game world where you could have box office numbers like you would see from a Sony Pictures or someone else. But let's start at the beginning. What is it that you're looking for from a developer, from a David Cage, who I would love to interview, by the way, because I thought his background story to Beyond Two Souls, which we'll talk about later, was fascinating to me. But what is that process like when I guess, are you looking at the landscape of stories that are out there? How do you go about the process of developing the story for a game? And if you would like, and I would love to, let's even start with Detroit Become Human. I mean, this is obviously the most popular game to me by far this year, especially with Jesse Williams. I mean, you've pulled together an incredible cast to pull this off. But how did you start with this? Like, was it an idea? Did somebody just scribble on a piece of paper? Help our audience understand that process.
So the process is one of our creator, David Cage, who's starting to write a story, and usually he starts with a personal story. Indigo Prophecy, for instance. If you've played the game, you know that at the very beginning of the story, the main character loses one of his children in a mall. And that's exactly what happened to David. He has two sons, and one day with his wife, they were in a mall and they lost one of the two, and they were desperately looking for him. And
okay.
Thank God they found him.
Yes.
But which is unfortunately not exactly what happens in Indigo Prophecy. But that moment of stress, the fear of potentially losing someone you love and care for, made him think about what it meant to be a father, and made him think about, how far would you go to save someone you love?
Yeah.
So that was Heavy Rain, of course, and so he started writing this story based on this personal experience he had. Then he can be influenced by certain movies, of course. Seven was certainly something that influenced him a lot on some of his works. Thrillers in general. Fahrenheit, Indigo Prophecy was a thriller. Heavy Rain was a thriller. Beyond, to a certain degree, was a thrilling experience. And in Detroit, there are also certain elements of this genre. So, of course, he draws influence from other media. But then he starts to write, and then, he has this first moment of sheer panic in front of a white page, and then he overcomes his panic, and then, his story comes together. He writes a treatment very much like in a movie, only the big difference is that in the kinds of works that we do, he has, with his team, to think about multiple scenarios. The script of Detroit is 4,000 pages long.
Wow.
He's really tried to create a story in which the player is truly in charge of the story, where the player can really truly change the way the story unfolds based on his actions and decisions. So you have to basically write all the different possibilities each time, and be careful that all these possibilities lead to meaningful stories. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very complex endeavor, but it's really the starting point of all our projects. Mm-hmm. For Detroit, he had written in 2010 a short story called Kara.
Yes.
And that was really the starting point of Detroit Become Human, because in Kara, he wanted to tell in about 5-6 minutes the story of the first android that becomes sentient, self-aware. And so you see this character being assembled by an operator, and all of a sudden there is a bug. All of a sudden, she starts to feel something. Mm-hmm. And she tells the operator, well, I thought I was alive, which she's absolutely not supposed to. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to tell the story of this moment And there is probably going to be in the future a moment where these very intelligent machines become self-aware. And so you wrote this very emotional piece. If you haven't seen it, go watch on YouTube, Kara. It's a very interesting short movie. And for us, it was a technical prototype that we were creating during the development of Beyond Two Souls. And we were overwhelmed by the reactions of gamers and even of non-gamers alike, who absolutely wanted to know what would happen to Kara when she goes out in the world, what would happen to the very first android who becomes self-aware, what kind of challenges is she going to face when she's going to be confronted with humans, and especially because, she's not supposed to be like this. And that was really the starting point of Detroit's story.
It's interesting that you talk about this because, to your point, this is how movies are written, right? This is, and it's an idea, right? It starts with a premise of potentially a personal moment that gets pulled apart in so many different ways to where you can build an entire environment out of that moment and create a movie and for something to entertain people and to get people to think, right? So I'm curious for you as a co-founder, I'm curious for you as a leader, what about this particular genre of industry as video game development goes, as a company, what is it for you that is like the thing that keeps you going in this? Like what is kind of the charge that you get every day out of this industry? Because I could only imagine, if we went back to the very beginning, like let's even go back to, before Indigo Prophecy, right? This was a very costly adventure and a very high risk idea, given the fact that nobody up until that point was really putting in that kind of in-depth thinking into a console game. And I want to be very clear, PC games had some things out there, but nothing to the level that what you guys were starting to develop. What is it for you that makes you constantly just excited and loving to be a part of this industry, from your perspective?
So the first thing is certainly being in contact with those amazing creators, authors, designers, composers. We worked in the past with Angelo Badalamenti, we worked with Hans Zimmer, we worked with incredible composers on Detroit Become Human, John Paisano, Philip Shepard, and Nima Fakrara. So working with these visionaries in their own craft is something that is, for me personally, essential. And this is the reason why I told you the beginning of my story, but this is why I got stuck into games, is because I had this opportunity to work with Paulo Coelho, with Jean Giraud, Philippe Drouillet, some incredible actors and actresses. Those talents are for me extremely important to work with. That's the first thing. The other thing is, to your point, is the challenge. When we started pitching Fahrenheit, Indigo Prophecy to publishers for them to fund the development of the game, 9 times out of 10, people were telling us, well, it's not possible. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't tell a story. You can't give players the possibility to change the way the story unfolds based on their actions. It's simply, you're going to have a giant story tree, and then it's you can't produce it. You can't make something meaningful out of it.
Right.
And it was particularly funny because we had to change publisher towards the end of the development, because that publisher who had funded most of the game still didn't believe we could do it.
Wow.
And we had a beta in our hands. It was playable.
Wow.
But they didn't bother play it until the end, believe it or not. And still back then, we went to multiple publishers, told them, okay, here's our beta. here's a demo. We presented the demo. Okay, great demo. It was the diner demo at the very first scene in the game, which, if you remember, is quite interesting.
Yeah.
They said, well, the demo is fantastic, but we don't believe you can do an entire game.
Wow.
But we have it. We have the beta. But still, it's being pioneers is sometimes extremely difficult. So if you don't like adrenaline, if you don't like fear, sometimes fear of not being able to pay the salaries, of not being able to provide for everyone in the studio in due course, then you should certainly not do that. Stay away from pioneering. Just do Me Too's, copy things. Well, for David Cage and us, it's we like the challenge. We like to be pioneers. We like to pioneer graphics. We like to pioneer storytelling, emotion in games, and that's what makes me wake up every morning. And this is why I like my job.
And it's a fascinating job. Let me let me say that it is definitely a fascinating job, because I think the one thing that a lot of people may not recognize is at the end of the day, to every pioneering moment has a lot of risk. I mean, just look at Elon Musk. I mean, nobody thought that what he was doing when he started it was a good idea. Now it's a cool thing, right? So I want to go back to that moment where not only were you pioneering a new idea that was being said no a million times, and you were only just kind of waiting for your one, and you finally got it.
Yep.
Let's also talk a little bit about the multi-generational aspect. So I want to go to the moment and just share with our audience here. Because back then millennials hadn't yet entered the workforce, and then all of a sudden you had this young person who came in, a digital native, who kind of could put pieces together. Like, what was kind of the aha moment for you as a leader and an owner of a company, that millennials had some sort of benefit as a talent base for Quantic Dream? Talk to our audience about that, and what has kind of been your aha moments that you've discovered in having younger generations work with you within the company?
Very good question, but it's kind of a tough one. I think, in the past few years, what I have seen change quite a lot is the fact that we are now in everyday contact from the first day of the development to way after the release with our fans. 15, 20 years ago when I started this job, we were creating pretty much in isolation our games, and then we were releasing them. And somehow we got an echo far away from how people perceived it. And usually it was through our publisher, through the press. So it was an indirect contact with the fans. Today we have this direct contact.
Yes.
And what is even more amazing, to go back to your question, is that we have now also more and more people come and work here, and the first thing they tell us is, we are fans of what you do. We love what you do. And that is quite incredible. So we have this this dialogue on a daily basis, constantly. David Cage and myself are on Twitter. We on forums. We talk to the audience. There's so many shows all year long where we're literally grabbed by the shoulder, and people tell us, hey, do this, do that. I love this, but I hated that. Things like that. So it's quite amazing. And the same applies also to the people who come and work here. And this millennial generation, they are aware of what you do. They understand and fully embrace what we're doing. And for them, it's not an abstract thing, because they are passionate. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they are even more, I wouldn't say more passionate than we are of what we're doing, but it's very alive, Mm-hmm. and sometimes even we have to almost stop them and tell them, no, that's enough. That's fine. The quality is okay there. Don't come on weekends. Don't come on Sundays. Just calm down.
Right.
It's good enough.
All right.
So and this is for me when I started seeing this generation come into the studio and work for us, who are completely aware, truly passionate. It's their life. It's not only their job. It's their life.
Yeah.
That is what you would probably call this aha moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty cool too, because this is something that I've learned about the advancement and the progression of video games. It has brought multiple generations together. So I want to kind of talk about that, right? Because David Cage is not a rookie. He's not 19, right? You're not 22, with this awesome company. You guys have been around for a while, right? You got kids, you got family, right? If you're talking to other leaders outside of the video game industry and they ask you, what do you do? Right. And you're like, well, I own a gaming production company. Do you get any flack for that? Do people think, okay, really? That's what you do every day? Like you don't have a quote unquote real job? Like what's kind of what are those interactions like with other older people about the work that you do? But then more importantly, how have you helped enlighten older people about the vast experience and the need of ideas and experience that older people bring to the gaming, to the video game world?
Yeah, well, it's true that it's been difficult in the first years to explain that you're a video game maker, you're video game producers, and people think that you're basically playing all day long, which unfortunately is not the case. That it's actually a very, I wouldn't say, serious, but also extremely complex industry. Very competitive, and it's an industry that is at the intersection of entertainment and of creativity and technology. Technology is a very, very important component of video games, and so you have to find the right balance between all these crafts. It's also a high budget industry. Most video games, especially in the AAA range, so these very high end, sophisticated video games. It's tens of millions of dollars of production budgets, and with these budgets comes the stress of having to manage these large sums of money and to get a return on investment for your investors. So it's certainly not as easy peasy as certain people may think. So what we usually do with David to advocate what we're doing is very simple. We invite people in, and when they come to the studio, then they're quite amazed. They're amazed by how many people work at the studio. We have up to 200 people. Here we have our own performance capture stage, which is very impressive, with 75 cameras capturing the movements of actors. We work with, Detroit Become Human, 300 actors that come in and out, perform. Some, known actors. We worked with Ellen Page, with Willem Dafoe, with Jesse Williams, and so many others with whom we Kadeem Hardison, etc. I mean, David Bowie. David did his first game with David Bowie back in 1997. So yeah, when people get to see first the studio and then experience the game. There's something very true about what you just said, is that one of the first sentences in each of our pitches with David is to say, we want to create games on which our grandparents could play, our parents could play. And this is why we chose storytelling, because that's the most universal thing to do when you want to, embrace and bring generations together. You tell them a story.
Absolutely.
And we're also trying, to give both core gamers, but also occasional gamers, or people who've never played a game, the possibility to get the control in their hands and play the game with simple controls, very intuitive, a very intuitive interface. So that's very much what we want to do.
Absolutely. So, it's pretty interesting when you started, you were naming some of those, folks who have come to the table to contribute their work as an actor. I'm curious for you, as these stories are being built, right, and you guys are kind of psychoanalyzing every single angle of putting, because I think what Quantic Dream has done is a challenge, but I think the further portion of what you guys have put together when it comes to the video game world is you guys are creating decision-based gaming that is immersive for the player, right? If I just go play any other game, right, it's just kind of you jump in and you just start playing, right? There's no separation of having to make a quick decision, right? There's no challenging your beliefs, right? Sometimes in a lot of other games, you guys are really taking on that decision making, based gaming. I remember the first time I had a major decision to make in Heavy Rain, or Beyond Two Souls. I would have to say, quite honestly, is one of my favorite games of all time, and that's hard for me to say because I play a lot of story based games.
You're forgiven.
But the reason is because this was one of the first times where I saw you. I mean, you guys were pulling interest of a Willem Dafoe, a Kadeem, a Ellen Page. Talk to our audience about what was it? Did you guys have like the character already created and you had to reach out to Willem Dafoe? What is that process like after the character is built, and how were you able to get like real names that people really knew to be able to jump on board and see this vision that you guys were putting together?
So when David starts writing his stories, he always has certain characters in mind, certain actors in mind, and so usually he's writing with some pictures of them in front of him, and in the case of Willem Dafoe or Ellen Page, these are actually the two actors that he had in his mind right from the get-go.
Wow.
And so, and then it is my job to pick the phone and call the agents, and then organize a first meeting with the actors. And we always follow the same process: meeting them, explaining them what we want to do, telling them about the story, telling them about the character, telling them about the technique, performance capture. What does it mean to perform in our studio?
Mm-hmm.
How is it going to look like? How they are going to look like, etc. So, giving them more information about the whole process, and when they feel confident and comfortable, then we start working together.
Wow, that's and I guess at the end of the day, they probably have as much to learn about the way their acting is captured, just as much as you have to learn about what they would need and how, I guess in some ways they have to be kind of sold on that this is an actual story that they want to be immersed in.
Absolutely.
So for you, when you think about these games, and I just want to help our audience get kind of an understanding. From the moment the game is thought of as an idea to the day you guys are showing up at E3, right, or all the conventions and kind of doing the tours, how long does it take really to get a game from thought bubble to ready to go for release?
So it takes David Cage about between 1 and 2 years to write the story.
Wow.
Of course, while he's writing, we're preparing all the technology. We're starting to put things into gear. And then it takes us about another 18 months to produce all the assets, all the graphics, all the animations, and then another 6 to 8 months to finalize everything.
Okay.
So in all, it takes us a minimum of 3 years. and up to 4, sometimes 5 years to finish the game.
Wow. So when you run into, I guess I would say trouble, because I am sure it all goes perfect when you start out in this process. So when you run into challenges and there's delays, and you've got PlayStation calling and saying, hey, where are we, right? Are we ready to go? Do we have something to share? What, as they're kind of putting their lineup together, right? What's the process like when you kind of run into these snags? And if there's any examples you could give from a snag that you guys might have had within one of the games previously produced, I would love to be able to share that story. But what's kind of your process that you kind of go through? Because as a leader, I'm sure at the end of the day, the pressure's kind of on you. It's to provide that final product, right, to the companies for viewing, or even your investors, right? So what are you guys gonna kind of do? What is kind of your personal best practices that you put in place when things kind of get in a down slump and you've got to kind of remove some things, zig and zag, and then kind of pull the team out of the slump? What are some of the things that you do?
I think what I've learned over the years is that the best way to handle this is these difficulties is through transparency, as simple as that. We all know, and the publishers we work with all know, that what we're doing is complex, it's difficult. There are a lot of uncertainties on the technological side, of course, but also on the creative side. Do we know exactly how long it will take David and his team to write the stories and for these to be top notch? No, we don't. We have an approximate, because it's not the first game we're making. We know approximately how long this is going to take, but we don't exactly know. Mm-hmm. We have pioneer technologies, engine, tools, motion capture, graphics, animation, so many different fields in which we do research and development, and by definition, when you start the research, you're never quite sure when you get to find all the answers that you're looking for. So we all know in what industry we're working in. And so transparency is the moment you see that things are slipping, you basically ring the alarm bell and say, okay, this is the situation, this is where we are, this is how much we spend, this is how much we still have to spend, and then you have to negotiate, discuss, and but at the end of the day, everyone is here to make the best possible game, the best possible experience. And it's the reason why we worked so long with Sony, for so long with Sony. We're working with them since 12 years now. It's because we know that they are the kind of publisher who's not going to ask us to abruptly terminate the development simply because we need to be on time and on budget. In the country, they're going to be here to make the best possible game. So yeah, that's transparency and sharing the vision very early with the team and throughout the journey. At the beginning of the development of a 4 or 5 year cycle, it's nobody knows where we're going. Mm-hmm. So even if we tell them, not each of them understand exactly where exactly this is going, and it's not tangible. Mm-hmm. Before you have the first prototype, before you have the first demo, before you're out there at E3 as you mentioned and showing it to the world, it's so you need to talk a lot with the team and make sure that everyone understands where the project is going and why we're doing what we're doing. So yeah, that for me is the second very important element: sharing the vision throughout the journey.
Absolutely. So here's a separate question that is kind of indirectly related, because obviously by the time something gets done and produced, You guys have, created rock star status games and stories and things that people are constantly talking through. How many stories are getting cut on a consistent basis that just never see the light of day?
In our studio in general.
Yeah. I mean, just even from a standpoint of, just this is a great idea, but no, not this one. No, yep, this is the one. But, just that process.
Every day, in the writing room that we have, ideas are being thrown and some are being picked up and others don't make it into the final game. We even have sometimes scenes that are partially or even totally produced that are then cut, but a little bit like in films,
Right.
When you're in the editing room and you have 3-4 hours of material, and at the end of the day, you find that the best way to tell your story is through a 2-hour cut. So a lot of things get abandoned, and you can say it's sad and what if, etc. But at the end of the day, what is important is that you have the best possible version of the story in the hands of the players.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I've noticed has been a consistent theme from everything that, from Indigo Prophecy all the way up down to Detroit, has been the community that does follow Quantic Dream, that looks at what you guys do. I mean, these games are not just immersive. They're not just things that people can play and try out. They're not just, awesome woven together stories. They're things that people are talking about months and years after. I mean, I can go back to the first time I saw a snippet of a coming soon of, Heavy Rain, right? And it took a while before the final release. And even after it happened, I mean, I still play it. Like I still have it, that and Beyond Two Souls, right? Was that an intended, consequence that you guys were hoping for, that people would not only just play the game and then put it to the side and act like it never existed? Or were you helping to, did you want to have people, constantly discussing some of the nuances, character development, story endings? I mean, my God, I've only gotten 2 story endings now, from Detroit Become Human, and I'm curious about all these alternate differences, right, based on some of the decisions that you make. But was that kind of an intentional thing that you guys are after, or was it just organic?
No, absolutely. Right from the beginning, the idea was to create story-based games that would really touch players on an emotional level, and you can only do that if you touch upon certain themes, and if you really, put the player in front of his responsibilities, let him do meaningful decisions. It's not only a decision that has a consequence and, then you just leave the control and you think about something else. No, we want to question the players as individuals. Sometimes ask them the tough questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we believe that the game is going to leave an imprint in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why some of them are very much touched. We receive a lot of letters from people who tell us about their personal experience and why the story resonated particularly with their own story, etc., or why they have never encountered this situation, why the game was important for them to know themselves better. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we want, and we believe that video games can do that. Mm-hmm. Video games can touch you on a personal level. And we're very happy and to a certain degree proud to be amongst the studios who are going into that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at, I want to kind of shift the conversation here. So when you kind of look at what the landscape of the video game industry is, and kind of all of the different things that you have to do once the game is produced. Give everybody an understanding. Like, on the surface, people see Quantic Dream show up at a E3 event or a Sony, entertainment event, a convention, or they, some of the hardcore people are even sitting there listening to some of the table reads, right? But give people an understanding of what you're doing at these conventions and what the leader is actually kind of focused on when you go to these things. What's happening behind the scenes that most people probably would have no idea that you guys are doing as you're kind of leading the charge on some of these developments.
Yeah, so that's something I think a little bit special about the games industry is that while you develop the game, you also have to start marketing it, and we market it throughout the world. So we're a small company, 100, 200 people. We're creating big games, and we have to be promoting these games throughout the world over the last 2 years of the production, and then for the next 2-3 months following the launch. Mm-hmm. And that's a difficult exercise because you have to travel, because when I say the world, it's truly the world. Mm-hmm. We release in Japan, which with Detroit has become one of our most important markets. China, North America, everywhere in Europe, of course, North America, mm-hmm. Africa, everywhere. And each time we have to be at these shows and just show what the game is about and talk to the fans, because that's more and more important these days. And so it's a difficult exercise, I must say. You're very tired. You're most of the time jet lag, and nonetheless, you have to smile. You have to. Be sometimes on big stages, 3, 4, 5,000 people, and that millions are watching live on top of it. But that's what you need to do these days to be able to exist in the market and create excitement for the game that you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the funny parts about what a fan may see is that in the industry, especially in the video game industry, I think the difference between that and movie industry is that in the video game industry, you can get up close and personal. Right? Yep. You can reach out and touch the actor as well as the creator, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're not superstars. Right. We don't have an entourage that is keeping us secure from the fans. And I would say the contrary. I mean, we love it. We'd like to exchange with the fans and talk to them and see the emotional reaction. The only frustration I have sometimes is not to be able to bring this back to the studio for everyone to feel, because most of the time David and I and a few other people in the studio, Adam Williams and Greg Diaconou, who have also been very much involved in the promotion of Detroit, for instance. Mm-hmm. We come back from these trips and we're supercharged. Yeah. Because you feel the love, you can touch it, right? And that gives us an incredible energy. Yeah. And yes, it is tiring, and yes, it is difficult to be at the same time developing and promoting the game. But it's really an incredible experience as well, also from an emotional standpoint.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a deeper question. What if you were to stop and you were on vacation and you were sitting down wherever you like to vacation, and you were to give and write down kind of the 3 things that you've learned up until this point in your career, what would they be? And at the end of the day, how has it shaped you as a human being with the work that you do?
You know, the first thing I would say is just be yourself, regardless of what people say and tell you. Regardless of you're always going to run into difficulties. You're always going to have some ingratitude. You're always going to have to suffer bad faith, etc., etc. But if you keep being yourself, you will have, I believe, no regrets. So that's the first thing. Be honest and transparent, if only to sleep well. And I've learned over the years that the people that stick in the industry, that are still here after 20, 25 years, are those who have had a certain amount of, or a great amount of transparency and honesty. And then dream. Because that's, never take impossible as an answer, never take no as an answer. And if you believe in your dreams, then they're going to come true.
Absolutely. So what's frustrating about your job? What's kind of the things that get under your skin? What's the stuff that you sometimes are just, sitting there and not really sure where to go? What's kind of frustrating in the everyday world of what you do?
The most frustrating thing is time. There's never enough time.
Sure.
And for me, the difficulty, I travel a lot, I work a lot, I have a family of 3 kids, and time becomes extremely sensitive. Because you need time for your kids, you need time on the project, you need time to promote it. It's very, and so when I'm missing time to be able to do all this, it creates a certain frustration. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very much the only thing, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm probably not easily frustrated.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up here, you've done some pretty significant projects from a history. When we go back, look 40, 50 years, I think there's definitely significant projects for Quantic Dream that'll be kind of in that history book. What's the future of video games in your opinion?
I think that video games, to a certain degree, we're already in that future. Video games that, and we truly fought a lot for this, my generation, I would say, to bring video games to an always larger audience, we called it the mass market, for everyone to play. Let's not forget that games initially were for a very tiny niche of core gamers that were a little bit cliched, programmers type of people, nerds, things like that. And today, we're seeing that everyone's playing. Male, female, young, old, every country, there is gaming going on, and that's certainly the way video games are going to continue to be, reaching an always larger audience, and so that's the first thing. The other thing is, of course, technology is going to evolve, and VR, AR, etc. is going to come to the table. I personally hope that stories, characters are going to be more and more important, that we're going to have more and more meaningful experiences. Mm-hmm. And I'm not only saying that because Quantic Dream has really been a pioneer in this field, but also because I have children, I'm a parent, and I wish this also for my kids and for their kids to be. I think video games are phenomenal medium. Mm-hmm. It's the medium of all possibilities. It's where you can be the author, the director, the actor, probably tomorrow, of of a story that today is being told to you, or at least you're given the possibility to play these characters. Tomorrow you'll probably be able to write it yourself. So it's an incredible medium, but sometimes a little bit too shallow, not meaningful enough. But I think we're going to see that evolution next years, and it's going to be a bright future.
Absolutely, and I truly believe Quantic will continue to pioneer on that portion. One of the things that I've always paid attention to, and especially when we do our podcast here, and when we share with people is, people who are definitely thoughtful, who are intentional about their approach to their work, right? And what that means overall for those who work with them, right? And the type of teams that they build, the legacy that they're able to leave, the ability to attract by passion, right? I think is so key. And what you've done and what David has done, and I would love to interview. Matter of fact, I probably need to come by and visit the studio one day. I think that's probably my next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to actually. But one of the things I've always been able to notice, and I'll speak for myself as not just a fan, but somebody who looks at industries. It is amazing when you can see somebody have an imprint and people are waiting for the next thing that you do. Right. And I would definitely say Quantic Dream has always been that for me. And I think it's mainly because there's a lot of intentionality, as you kind of talked about in the beginning, right? It starts with a core personal story. And I think because you bring people so close to reality and decision making all at one time in this immersive experience, no matter what the game is that you guys have created, I think that there's something to be said for that. Right. And so just thank you for your leadership on that. And thank you for being willing to take the freaking risk. Right? Like it's not, it's not easy. And I'm sure even though you guys are in somewhat of a pioneering state, people are always waiting for you to top the last thing that you did. Right. Like it never ends. So with that being said, here's my last question. Are you guys already working on the next game?
You bet.
Good deal. I'm sure of that. And I think one of the cool parts is what you guys produce is always top-notch quality, especially with the samples that we get at conventions and different things of that nature. Is there a potential when we could see at a next convention, maybe 2019, the next trailer or snippet or a project that you guys are working on?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
We'll make public what we're working on whenever it's ready.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've always done.
Absolutely. Good deal. Well, listen, thank you for taking the time out. I always realize time is something we cannot get back. And so wherever we put it, it's invested. And I hope that this conversation has been as much of a joy for you as it is for me and our audience. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you continue to do. And just know, as the travel is tiring and as every stage seems to be a little bit more nuanced and people are asking really thoughtful questions, it's because of the great work that you've done. And so just from a person who's first time ever picked up a PlayStation 1 to now my Pro, or played games, and now, being able to play games like Detroit Become Human. Thank you so much for the work that you put into. People are patient because they know Quantic Dream is going to give a great product. So thank you so much. And any final words that you would like to leave with our audience?
Well, thank you for watching. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you, Chris. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for your kind words, which I'm going to share with the whole team.
Absolutely. Well, listen, you definitely are doing things on a high level, and that's why you're right here on High Level Wisdom for New Generation Leaders. Thank you for your time, and you have a great day.
Thank you.